Hi, and welcome back to White Noise with your usual hosts, Sky and Leanna, and happy Pride Month. I did debate about whether to actually start with Happy Pride Month, because I understand that this Pride Month hasn't been, I say, as happy as others. I think it's just been a reminder that Pride isn't just a celebration, it is a protest. And it's a protest that a lot of people, like, not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel right now because of everything going on. So we today kind of wanted to be that light at the end of the tunnel, not to like, I don't know, make it sound prolific or anything like that. But we wanted to talk about, you've probably already seen from the title, some feel-good LGBTQ movies. Because they're out there, but a lot of the more angsty ones and, you know, stereotypical, like, very gays ones, they get the push. And yeah, we just wanted ones that maybe just remind people that, you know, there is love, there is safety, there is acceptance, like inside the community, but also outside of the community. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. And like Sky said, these are feel-good films. I mean, everyone's gonna have their own opinion on what a feel-good film is or not. But these are the ones that, you know, we have decided and make us feel good, and we hope they'll do the same for you. And
I mean, not to just already go off topic, but like,
yeah.
me and Leanna were talking about before how we're only going to be talking about films we've seen ourselves today, so there will be a little bit of an honourable mention at the end for ones we haven't seen, but people say are part of the feel good genre. But we both, when we were looking up feel good queer films, stuff like Brokeback Mountain was coming up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't get that. On
Which,
what planet?
I mean, you made a good point. I think it's because there is a difference between films, like comfort films that you watch, because I get it. I get that for that film. When we say feel good films, we mean films that actually leave you feeling like uplifted
Yeah,
at the end,
exactly.
you know. So yeah, I think
Completely agree.
that
And yeah, I mean, that's why I'm going to start with The Handmaiden. I mean, we've talked it
us
to,
talking about The
like,
Handmaiden,
yeah, we've
Leanna.
talked about it to death, honestly. But
Yeah,
I mean, if we're going
there's
to
a
talk about
reason.
it, yeah, and honestly, if we're going to talk about it at any point, it's here because I don't know about you, but it makes me so happy to be a queer woman. It's a beautiful film. I know some people feel a certain way about it and the fact that it was directed by a straight man, but at the end of the day, like, it is a beautiful film that lots of people find a lot of happiness from, and it's very validating, and it kind of rejects it's so interesting because you consider the film Blue is the Warmest Color came out, you know, not much earlier than The Handmaiden, and people, you know, use the same critiques against it, as in, you know, like I said, directed by a straight man, but it's done in such a different way. And Park Chan-wook himself was trying to dissect the male gaze, and the actual narrative of the film is about like the male gaze and how that mistreats women. And as a queer woman, that is so relatable and it's intrinsic to the experience of being a queer woman. And I just don't know how anyone could watch The Handmaiden. Personally, I don't know how you could watch that see it any other way.
If anyone's interested, I did go off recently on a Twitter thread. I got a bit heated because somebody said that The Handmaiden, it was like embedded within another thread. It wasn't even the point of the thread, but like somebody had said that The Handmaiden was a straight person's idea of what a queer movie is, and I saw red. I saw red. I put a thread together that was researched. Like, I didn't just like, you know, go off like actually. But I might even retweet it or repost it again after this episode goes live. It's one of those films that I feel like you just said, you kind of have to do your research, because I understand why people had similar feelings. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's just because the pretext I went into the film, like, because, you know, you had already told me to watch it. I trust your film advice implicitly, especially when it comes to queer films, because, like, you know me, you know kind of what I like and what I don't like. And Blue is the Warmest Color is a film I had a big issue with. I just didn't, it never sat right with me. But The Handmaiden never made me feel like that. So, like, when I did learn afterwards that, you know, care was taken with, you know, the scenes that people had issues with, and also the fact that some of those scenes, like you said, meant to be mocking the male gaze, to me that just came across instantly. But I guess I can kind of understand why people might have felt like it was a little icky. Like I said, I didn't at all at any point, but this is us saying it's not. Like, it wasn't,
Yeah.
it was not meant to come across that way. Park Chan-wook has spoken explicitly in interviews what his aim was, and he also acknowledges the fact that, you know, he doesn't necessarily say he is the person to tell this story, he just happened to be the person with this particular story. You know, he talks about how there are so many queer female directors out there that are doing the same things that he is, that need the spotlight and should be given the same praise and attention that the Handmaiden did.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, aside from all of the context around it, just the film itself is, it treats the two queer women in it with such care, and it's so tender in the way that it portrays their relationship and their growing feelings for each other. And it's just so delicate. It doesn't at any point be I don't know how to explain. It treats it in a way that you would see a heterosexual piney couple. And I think that's something that Sky and I both love about The Handmaiden, is it's so good at displaying pining from two people that might not have even understood what being a sapphic woman was in that time period. Like, they don't really understand these new feelings they're having for each other, which is like a really interesting part of the film. And even though they're both adult women, that's kind of the feeling of being a young queer person, which is quite fun to experience again as an adult, like the unsureness and like, wait, what? All that part of it is really well done.
It's I loved it. So the first time I watched it, I've watched it so many times since, and so we talk about it a lot. There's a reason. I also feel like it's just on its own, it's a fantastic film. Like, obviously we're talking about queer films, it's an amazing queer film. I probably should say now, we're not going to be talking about explicit spoilers for these films, but the stuff that we say might have some spoilery stuff in them. So what we'll also do is that there will be a list of these films in the description of this episode and also on our socials. So if you wanted to go look at the films we're talking about, they'll be in the order, hopefully, that we talked about them. So you can either skip over those parts if you want to watch them, or you can, better yet, go watch them all and then come back, because that would just make the episode much more enjoyable. So I guess one of the biggest spoilers of this is the end. So this is I'm going to be talking about the ending of The Handmaiden. So if you haven't seen it, please go watch it. But it's a queer film that subverts queer stereotypes in so many different ways. First of all, it's to the two women, like, it kind of redefines what femininity means. Like, you know, some people might quote, oh, one is more feminine and one is more masculine because their upbringing, but that's just not true. You know, at one point, you know, you even have them, like, not necessarily trading clothes, but you have Hideko dressing up Suki, and which is just such a cute scene anyway. What's the quote when what does she say?
She's like, my doll or something
like that, or she says like, ladies are the dolls of handmaidens or something like that.
Oh,
and
it's like borderline erotic, but
oh my god, it's just it's so good. This episode isn't actually gonna be anything constructive. It's just gonna be us going, it's so good, oh my god, I love it.
Why we love The Handmaiden.
Yeah. But another thing is that it doesn't do the bury your gays trope, which you would actually, I really expected it from this film, and I almost kind of accepted it, because I was like, look, it's the time period, there is no hope for these women, like, even with all the twists and turns this film has, and it has many, it's a fantastic film, but it didn't do that. They got a happy ending. Like, not only did they get a happy ending, the big bad of the film also got a nasty ending, which I'm not saying you need. I would have still been happy with the film without that, but it was just, I don't know, it's a very rewarding film to watch, I think.
Completely.
For so many reasons.
A lot of people might say, you know, like you just mentioned, the time period, you expect it to go a certain way. A lot of people might actually consider that a flaw of this film. But I think, you know, sometimes we've got to give people happy endings. And, you know, there's a lot of critique against that, like Bridgerton, you know, like rewriting history in a way that just is not true. But every now and again, it is nice. You know, it's you've just got to be quite smart and delicate and careful around how you do it, and I think this film did that well.
Plus, I also think it's important to realize that, like, not every queer person in history was killed. Like, it's just not like, even people who were openly queer, like, they didn't disappear from history. And it's like, do you know what I'm really enjoying at the moment? There's so many older couples on TikTok that are sharing pictures of themselves when they were younger and comparing them to now, and there's just something so heartwarming about seeing it, because it's like, oh shit, we do get futures. Like, it's even today, there are people like our age and younger and possibly even older, like, still feeling like, especially with the way things are right now, there isn't a future that we're all moving towards. Like, it's almost like we're moving towards having to go back into hiding again and things like that. So I feel like The Handmaiden has that kind of effect of, it's just, yeah, it's so uplifting. Yeah, and it's a super rewarding film. It's the best way I think to describe it. Like, it has a really good payoff at the end. There are so many twists and turns in it. Like, if you just wanted to watch it as like, not because, oh, this is a queer film, I want to watch it, definitely do that, because it's just a fantastic film in general, which makes it even better, because there are films that I've liked that I will admit I have just liked them because they had really good queer representation in them, and it was just a shame that like the film itself wasn't the best. The Handmaiden's just tie a bow around it. Fantastic.
That's why we love it so much, and that's why I think so many people do, and our listeners will as well. Is because, like you say, it's a good queer film, it's a good film, it's a good thriller, it's a good Park Chan-wook film. Like it just masterpiece. I love it. I don't really I have much else to say, honestly, other than like listen to our episode on it, which we will link on YouTube, and
that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we always want an excuse to talk about it, but yeah, Leanna's right, we should probably move on. So the next film we want to talk about, actually, it's another sapphic film, but I don't think you could get anything more opposite to The Handmaiden. Is But I'm a Cheerleader. I feel like it's probably, especially for women, I feel like it's the first feel-good film that people think of when, you know, people are like, oh, I want a queer film that isn't gonna like make me cry all the time, you know.
Cry in a good way.
Yeah, and I actually, But I'm a Cheerleader had never been on my radar until I was in university. I was living with somebody at the time who kept telling me to watch it, and they told me nothing about it, so I was not prepared for what I was about to watch. So when it initially started, obviously Natasha Lyonne is in it. Orange is the New Black was really big at the time, so I knew who she was. I loved her. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna watch this. Of course I'm gonna watch this. Clea Duvall was also in it, so I was like, amazing. I think I was out at that time in uni. I think I'd recently just come out, so it was like I was very much looking for this, like actively looking for this kind of media, because in a weird way I felt like I had permission now. That's a whole other topic, but a lot of these films for me that I'll be talking about today were like, I watched them at kind of like a turning point in my own journey, so that's why they stuck with me. But yeah, I was not prepared for But I'm a Cheerleader, and if for some reason, you know, you're listening to this and you haven't watched it, this is one that I would say just go watch it. It's a trip, because when it first started I was like, this is ridiculous, like this is stupid, like what is happening. I was like, this must have been like a flop film, whatever. And then I started to get it. I started to realize it was poking fun at heteronormity, and it was also poking fun at conversion camps, because of like how ridiculous that, because obviously horrible places, but how ridiculous the mentality of them are. And also RuPaul, the fuck, just I know that RuPaul had like a career before this film, but obviously to me RuPaul is Drag Race. So I was like, Ariana, what are you doing here? Like, what's going on? So it was just great, because it was so over the top and cutesy, but also like had a really important message at the same time.
No, yeah, completely. And I mean, even like, if you're someone that's interested in visuals as well, this is a really nice example of a happy gay film, which looks gorgeous. Because I know some people think a lot of like happy gay films are like low budget, and like, you know, there's like an instant assumption. This is so unique looking, because like Sky said, it really mocks heteronormativity, and it doesn't just mock that, it mocks, you know, assumptions about gender and everything. So everything is so pink or blue, and it's fantastic.
It's so fantastic. Like, just every time I see screenshots from that film, I'm just like, I need to watch it again.
Yeah,
it's honestly like all of these films that we're talking about today that I have seen, I've watched a couple of times, but there's just something about But I'm a Cheerleader, I could literally watch it over and over again. It's funny, it's feel good, and it's another one that has a happy ending. Like, it's just, you know, run off into the sunset ending. Like, I need more of those
as well.
Oh, fucking cute. Like, again, I understand the realism of like not even just queer couples, but like any couples in like coming of age stuff. It's always that thing of like, oh my god, you're so young, you're not even going to be together, blah, 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 whatever. But it's like, I feel like every generation, every kind of community needs that kind of film.
Yes.
Is over the top, it is ridiculous because it's fun, and it does have that really cutesy sunset ending. Like, I want more of those, and I want them that, you know, again, I get obviously the place that they were in and what the situation was happening, but I don't necessarily always need the worst thing to have happened to a couple before they can get to that point. Like, you know, there are teenagers in this film at the end of the day. Like, it doesn't have to be fucking all Riverdale angst. It can, like, they can just, you know, have a meeting of, you know, them being in the same situation, and, you know, the feelings growing for each other, and then just like quite literally running off into the sunset.
Completely agree. I think it's nice to have a film where you don't really know where it's like, you do know where it's going. Like, it's kind of laid out like a stereotypical teen rom-com, but because it's based on queer characters, you also do have that element of like, oh, is this going to be different? So it's almost really refreshing to have like that really generic cliche rom-com story for queer women, which now we are more used to. But like, considering when you watch it, you are just transported back to that era because it is so Y2K.
I would also say not in the same way though, because like you said, I love, obviously, so you can have queer rom-coms now, but there is something about Y2K rom-coms. Like, we all love them. We all fucking love them. Even if they're trash, we love them. And I'm just so upset that there weren't more queer rom-coms like that, you know, because obviously just marketing them at the time, like, people didn't want to watch them. And, you know, or people, even like But I'm a Cheerleader as an example, like, you know, probably ignorance on my part, but I hadn't heard for it for a long time. I was nearly, like, I think I was nearly 19 or 20 by the time someone had actually mentioned it to me. And now I get it because I see it everywhere, but I also think that's partly due to like a resurgence of people finding it, which is fantastic.
Largely due, I would say, to like film Twitter in Letterboxd as well. It's on so many lists on Letterboxd.
You'd have to also put it down to Natasha Lyonne being in it. Like,
true.
Might be controversial and also completely inaccurate, but I would argue if she hadn't made it in Orange is the New Black, it wouldn't have had the resurgence that it did.
No, I completely agree. People always go back to people's old stuff, don't they?
Exactly. So that's it for that one. Again, probably could talk about it forever. If any of these, you know, films you really, really want us to like get into, let us know, and maybe we can do like a mini-sode on it at some point.
Yeah, completely. I mean, we don't have the time right now to go into like the actual like story of each film, but we would love to give these the, you know, the extra dissection.
This is basically it's basically just back and forth for me and Leanna going, watch this one, watch this one, watch this one. So anyway, but yeah, moving on.
So the next one is like a modern classic. It's Shiva Baby. I'd say it's a bit of a cult classic. It's a Letterboxd fave. It's a film Twitter fave. So, you know, this is similar to, like we said about like the Handmaiden, where even if you don't care about, say, like queer characters, which why don't you? It is just a good film. Think Uncut Gems if it was about a sugar baby and her ex-girlfriend is at a shiva. It's so good. So the whole point of this film is a young woman who's a sugar baby is at a Jewish shiva, and her whole family's there, and her sugar daddy is there, and her ex-girlfriend is there, and like her sugar daddy's wife and baby are there, and the whole point is it's just kind of like a pressure cooker film. And it's all in this one location of her going around trying to navigate these different social situations. Her parents don't know she's queer, all these different things, and it's fantastic because her being queer isn't the storyline. So this is like the first film in this where it's not really the story. I mean, in The Handmaiden, it's not the entire story, but it is like a massive element.
It is.
Exactly. So yeah, Shiva Baby is a really nice example of it just adds depth to a character, and being queer isn't an entire identity. But again, it's a feel-good one because it's funny as fuck, because Rachel Sennott, however anyone pronounces her name, she is just a funny fucker. And she is also a queer actress, which is really nice to see. Like a queer comedic actress in particular. I feel like you don't often see that, because a lot of, say, like queer actors and actresses do unfortunately tend to be drawn to like queer dramas. I know that's such an assumption, but we all know it's true, you know. So it is really nice. It is really nice to see a queer actress just kind of be able to laugh at it. And it's so much more what our generation and like people younger than us, you know, Gen Z, younger millennials, this is what we want to see more of, I feel like. It's, you know, it's the same as like looking at, say, things like from a while back, like the L Word and all. It's just some people want some fun around queerness, like with But I'm a Cheerleader. So if you want that kind of thing from But I'm a Cheerleader, but maybe you want a quicker film like that just rolls at a pace and it's just a funny evening while you also get to like enjoy tension and a bit of cringe, Shiva Baby's the film for you.
Well, it's the first one on the list that I need to go check out myself because I haven't seen it, and now you just explaining it, I really don't know why, because
You
like
would
it has like, well, it has everything in it that I love with films, like, you know, being filmed in one setting, like the pressure cooker drama of it all, and like
to make it even better, Diana Agron, queen of closeted lesbians, is in it.
Okay, I know what I'm doing after this episode then. I also like you just said, and I think this is kind of because some of the feel-good films that like I saw come up when I was like said doing some research for this episode were more queer coded. And don't get me wrong, we've talked before how we love subtext, we love queer coding, like we are just those people. But for that reason, when you do have films that aren't queer coded, a lot of the time they tend to be about queerness or like someone's coming out journey or stuff like that, which again I also love. But I think it's really nice that you can have a film that like, it's just who the character is, and like it's part of the plot, because like, you know, if you're gonna have a film that's to do with relationships, obviously somebody's sexuality is going to come into it. It's just how it works. So I like that.
No, I agree, because I feel like there's this whole thing where like if a main character's gay, it's quite often coded, and if a character is explicitly gay, it's usually a side character. And this is when we're talking about if it's not the main point of the story, you know, usually if the main character is gay, that is the story. So it is really nice, to see a film where the main character is gay, but it isn't the narrative. So it's very refreshing. I like it for that.
So my next recommendation is queerness is this, it is kind of the central point of it, but it also kind of isn't. Is The Way He Looks. It's a film that I had again never heard of before, and I was just going through Netflix one day. It's unfortunately now been taken off Netflix, but like what's fucking new? So I can't think. I think it might be on Prime. I don't know. You can find it somewhere, I'm sure. Actually, interestingly, it was developed from a short film, a 17-minute short film that you can find on YouTube. So if you wanted to watch the short film first and then watch the full-length film, even though the full-length film isn't super long anyway, I would say go do that, because the short film is just as good. Like it manages to capture the same elements that the main film did. It's about two boys and their friend. They're Leo, Gabriel, and Giovanna, I think their names are. I did write them down, but now I'm worried I might get the characters mixed around. But basically the story is, it's a very stereotypical story of it's coming of age. Giovanna and Leo are best friends. It seems they have been for like their whole lives, and a new boy starts at the school and becomes like the third in their trio. And it's interesting because it kind of deals with the character, this is more of a side thing, but it deals with the character of Giovanna crushing on this new guy, not getting attention from him because the two boys are crushing on each other. And it also deals with like when new people come into your life and kind of how it can fuck it up in a way. But the really interesting thing about this film is that Leo, one of the boys, is blind, and it's again, it's not what the film's about, but it's one of those things that like obviously it changes things in the film, and the way that they kind of use it in Leo and Gabriel's relationship is really interesting, because for example, Leo holds onto people's arms when he walks, like if he's walking, and when he's walking home, like either Giovanna or Gabriel walk him home just to make sure he gets home safe. So they have to touch, and you know, they get called, it's not like a lot, but they do get like a little bit of bullying from like some fucking ignorant boys, like saying, oh, you know, you're gay or whatever. And it's just so sweet, because again, this is kind of a spoiler, but you'll still want to watch the film, trust me. There's just a bit at the end after everything's happened and like they have actually gotten together where he's holding onto his arm and the boys call out, so he just holds his hand instead. And I just fucking loved it because I was like, yeah, fuck you. But then the bullies kind of then like make fun of the guy that called them gay, and which was like kind of even nice because it just shows that like it wasn't really coming, it didn't make it okay, but it wasn't really coming from a place of prejudice. It was just boys being stupid and like realizing that, oh, this makes my friends laugh, so I'm gonna say this. So
that's quite nice to show that it's not always from a place of genuine hate. It
yeah.
is just not knowing any better.
Mhm.
Like, while that's not ideal, it's nice to see a representation of that in film, because like, yeah, a lot of young people, they grow, they just don't know better at the time. That sounds really good.
It was, I'd say, I really, it also gave, say, some insight into just, I don't actually know if the actor was blind himself. I don't think so. But it did focus on kind of like what that world is like to somebody who wouldn't have never thought about it before. Like even Gabriel like forgets sometimes that he's blind. And for example, he says, oh, we should go see a movie. And he's like, oh, obviously not. But then they do go see a movie, and Gabriel just describes everything that happens to them. But it's a really cute moment because he has to lean over and like whisper into his ear, and it's just the way that they naturally kind of put it into the relationship is really sweet. It's the same thing in the short film. The short film actually has the same three main actors. I don't know how it came about. It's hard to find some stuff about it because it's a Brazilian film. There's not a lot about it online, like the development and stuff. But it's just, I came across it. It was one of those hidden gems. I loved it, and I was like, I have to talk about it. I thought it was just really good.
Cute. I've heard about it previously, like just the name and it being, a queer film. But that actually does sound very heartwarming. Lovely.
It's super cute. But it's super cute in, I'm not going to linger too long on this because I don't want to piss people off. But it's like, it's almost kind of like maybe the vibe that Call Me By Your Name should have had. With, it's like without the ickiness.
Yeah, okay, I get you.
You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, I get it with Call Me By Your Name. I get that like it is an experience that a lot of young queer men have had. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But basically it's just because, the way he looks is between two age-appropriate teenagers having similar experiences and just like, yeah, kind of discovering each other's worlds and learning more about their own worlds.
Love that. So my next film, to pivot, is All About My Mother, which is again a foreign language queer film. It's from 1999, so it's a little bit older, and it's directed by Pedro Almodovar. What a king, honestly, what a king. Made so many queer films, is a queer filmmaker, at a time when it wasn't such a prominent thing, to be a queer filmmaker. But his films are quite often about queerness, but they explore it. It's not just like, oh, I'm gay, so my films are about being gay. Like, it's he was very much a part of a community in Spain that it was back in the time, it was very progressive. A lot of like trans individuals, gay individuals, and Pedro Almodovar, a lot of these people he met in the community, he would put them in his films and like center the narratives around them. So All About My Mother is about a young man in Spain who unfortunately passes away, and his mother goes on a journey. I think she goes from Madrid to Barcelona, or it's the other way round, and she's looking for his father. But this is where all the language gets interesting, because his dad is actually it's hard to explain. It seems very specific to Spain in that time period, but it doesn't necessarily confirm if his parent is a trans woman or a drag performer. But there's a really big community at the time in Spain where it would kind of be what I guess a lot of people would think of as like, say, like ladyboys, like in Thailand traditionally. And it's just so interesting the way like gender is discussed in the film, because there's never a need to like put specific labels on anyone. And it's so refreshing, particularly in that time period. And it's such a beautiful film, like about parenthood, being a child, queerness, gender identity. Really, there's not a massive amount of narrative to it. It is more just like conversation based, but it's just so stunning. Like the look of it as well is so vibrant. And it's just like, if you ever want to maybe see how queerness is explored in other cultures, I would say like Pedro Almodovar's films, go for it, especially All About My Mother, because it honestly, that was like the first I'd say that's the first film I ever watched that I truly was like, this is just such a different world to me. Watched it in film class and I was like 16, and it was so interesting to see how some people just did not get it, which is fair enough, valid, especially at that age. But honestly, like for anyone that's like really exploring the world of queer cinema, I would say it's a fundamental title. So go for it. I think you would love it, Sky.
It's interesting because it actually kind of seems like it covers a lot of the things of the last film that I want to talk about.
Oh, nice.
The last film on my list that I wanted to talk about is a Polish film that I actually only discovered yesterday. Only came out this year, so I don't blame myself too much for that, but it's called FanFik. If you haven't seen it, it is on Netflix right now. Go watch it while it lasts, because who knows anymore. It's not what I literally typed in LGBTQ plus films, and I think it wasn't the first one that came up, but like it was called FanFik. Obviously I was gonna click on it. It wasn't what I thought it was gonna be, but I wasn't disappointed. Like obviously with a name like that, I thought it was gonna be about, I don't know, two people connecting over fan fiction, or like writing fan fiction into life. It kind of was a little bit like the second one. Don't really think the fanfic was needed in it, in my opinion. I think by like the second half of the film, it seemed like it almost kind of forgot that was the premise of it. But anyway, it was a really good film. It's a film about, because I only watched it yesterday, I actually really can't remember the names too well, but it is a film about transitioning. So the main character starts the film as a girl. She's weird, like she's kind of popular in her group, but like she's weird. They see her as a bit weird, a bit strange, like she dresses quite eccentrically. I will be using she, her for the beginning of the film, and then he, him during the transition. But say at the beginning, she writes fanfic. That's the kind of thing she writes. Fanfic, it seems to be people know that she writes it as well, and like she's kind of popular for it, which just doesn't seem realistic to me, but maybe it's different in Poland. But anyway, it's another coming of age story. New boy comes to the school. Long story short, she's obviously going through something. I didn't really understand at first where it was going, and then when I thought I did, I was like, oh, I don't think that's what's going to happen. But what happens is that she goes to a party at this guy's house. She arrives just completely drenched because it was raining, and he says, I've got some clothes you can change into. And like from there, she like looks at herself in the mirror and realizes that this whole time the feelings that he's been having is that he's a boy. That's just how it works.
Oh, so is it almost like this, just like immediate gender euphoria?
It really is. And I feel like, again, I'm not someone who can really comment on the experience myself, but I feel like it's a really good example of just that feeling you feel. Like before, pre-transition, he didn't really even understand why he felt the way he did. Like, some content warning for this one, there are references to self-harm and self-abuse and things like that. You don't really see any of it. You see more the aftermath, and it's a small part, but that's just a warning for it. So pre-transition, he was self-harming, didn't understand why he kind of didn't want to be here, or why he was feeling, or why his only escape was fan fiction. And then after he puts on this new boy's clothes, like literally he looks at himself in the mirror, and the smile is just, it just beams. And the way that it's filmed, I think is great, because like he literally walks out into the party, it kind of like ignores everybody else and is in like kind of like a daze, and there's like glitter thrown in the air. I don't know, I thought it was really beautiful. It was really good. But the reason it kind of got even better is because it doesn't just deal with this one individual's experience. It kind of deals with just gender in general. Like there's also side characters. There's like a really stereotypical side character who is a guy who has like a really strict dad and like expect him to be a certain way, so like he fulfills every like masculine expectation, yet his dad still doesn't like love him or whatever. And then there's also this girl who dresses in a way the teacher doesn't like, I think is the best way I think to describe it. The teacher thinks it's inappropriate. It's also a female teacher, I want to point out, which I think is really important. Okay. And basically the teacher says to this girl all the time, she's like, well, if you spent more time studying than like on your makeup or whatever, maybe you do better, and basically bullies her. And we see this happen a couple of times, and then just kind of at the end, like all the class comes together and it's like, no, fuck you. You can't talk to somebody like that. You can't do. And there's also like infighting in the group that they kind of get over as well. So it's just nice to see that. And then the boy who had come to the school, they actually ends up in a relationship with the person who's transitioned, and then there's like that. They kind of explore that as well, because it's like they don't make it, oh, this person is a savior for the main character. It's like he ran away from home because he's gay, and when kind of like it does get tough, he actually runs away and doesn't support the main character. And then they have to work through that as well. It also shows the dad coping with his child being transgender, and like at first it's that, you know, the dad says to him, he's like, you know, I'll hang out with you a lot more, like, can you just stop this ridiculous dress up thing, which obviously really upsets the main character. But then it shows the dad going through it, but it doesn't, like, again, it doesn't show the dad being like suddenly accepting. Like, it has this really small moment of the dad actually talking to a parent of one of the other children who's queer, and he basically, all he says is, I'm going to miss her, referring to the main character, and the other dad just goes, yeah, sometimes you will. And then like the main character and the dad have a moment, and just, I thought it was fantastic. Like, I really did. It made me feel all the good feelings, and I also think it was just, it showed really important experiences, like I said, not just from inside the queer community but also outside of the queer community. Like, I really think it showed that a lot of the issues that the queer community are facing are shared by people outside of it. And I'm not saying that like, oh, that validates it, because obviously it's valid on its own, but I think it's important just to show that, like, especially in coming of age stuff and growing up, we're all fighting the same fight. And
that sounds lovely. It sounds very much like about like, so like community around these experiences as well.
yeah, I would definitely say so. And just, yeah, it was another film I really thought, I was like, this is not going to end well. I was like, please end well, please end well, please end well. And it did. Like, it literally had a romantic running through, not like literally, but like that running through the airport moment. And like, it's also funny as well. I just, well-rounded film. I'm gonna watch it again, because I said to my partner, I was like, you need to watch it, you will love it. So of all the films I've spoken about today, that one's the one, because I said I think it literally came out this year, which is another thing which is nice. It is under the Netflix umbrella. Like I said, I don't know if it's because it's Polish, like, I don't know, the Netflix, are they going to keep it around more? I don't know, but just go watch it while it's there, because unfortunately, because it's a Netflix original, I don't know if it would be anywhere else if they decided to get rid of it. So hopefully they won't. I will riot if they do. But yeah, that's my last one.
You've sold it to me.
You should. It seems it explores similar things as the one you spoke about just before. So I think, yeah, be a good,
definitely.
Yeah.
But like, it's like a modern twist on it. It sounds like. I will definitely watch. The final film we want to talk about is something that me and Sky have both seen. I actually watched it for the first time with Sky years back. I'd never
I forgot about
heard
that.
of it.
And you know what's ironic? We were gonna watch The Handmaiden.
Beautiful.
Full circle. But yeah, go on.
That's actually really good. But yeah, it's Pride, which is, you know, it's a very loved film and it is feel good, but we do just want to say that this is probably like the only one that doesn't necessarily end well. More in that, you know, when you see a lot of true event films at the end, you get that blank screen with the text.
Yeah.
That is upsetting.
I would say, yeah,
film itself is very uplifting.
The ending is, I think the best way to describe it is the ending is very euphoric. It has a very, you know, if you don't read the text, I'm not saying don't, because obviously it's really important, but if you don't, it has that, it has that very euphoric feeling that a lot of the films that we've spoken about today have. But yeah, it does, because obviously, like you just said, at the end of the day, it's real, it's based on real events, so it's gonna be a little bit more hard hitting.
It's basically about two very different communities coming to each other's aid, and it is just so heartwarming in that very specific like British film way. And I think what I like so much about it is there's something about the warmth to particularly like British films, which, you know, as a Brit, you are just gonna love. So if you're a British listener, I highly recommend it. And you don't really see that with a lot of queer stuff, you know, like the funniness you get from, say, like classics like Gavin and Stacey In-Betweeners. Imagine you get that like classic British feel and comedy, but about queerness. I guess the best thing I could compare it to, which is something a bit newer, is probably like Derry Girls. I guess, like the way that oh my god, I've forgotten her name. What is her name? Claire.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, like Claire was done so well, you know, like her
Hmm.
coming out and everything. And if you liked that and you want more stuff like that, I really recommend
Hmm.
Pride.
You know what it is? It's banter,
Yeah,
which is
basically.
something, no matter how they try, Americans could be funny, and this isn't me like doing another
Yeah.
episode where like I'm ragging on American humor again, but it is just different. Like
Yeah,
Brits do
yeah.
banter, like we invented banter, like
Yeah.
it just, we do it better. We also understand it, so like Leanna just said, if you're a British listener, then
You're
you'll
just
get
gonna
it.
enjoy it more, I think, like in
Yeah.
general. But one thing I really do love about, say, like Pride is it's about queerness, but it doesn't necessarily take the queerness too seriously. There are moments where there is true weight to it, but there are other moments where it's just like fun to be gay, you know?
Hmm.
And that's what's really lovely about that film. And it's similar to, say, like when you watch any kind of film based on true events, you have to take it with a, you know, pinch of salt, grain of salt. But for the most part, it's just a very enjoyable film.
Hmm.
It's got all your faves in it. So
It really does.
it's got everyone and their mother in it. And
Yeah.
come on.
It really just goes through that whole trope of like the UK really does only have like a select
Like
few
five.
actors, like yeah, that just
Mm,
appear in everything.
so good.
But I can't. Oh my god, I totally forgot that the first time you watched it is when we watched it together.
And that must have been years ago as well.
Yeah, it would have been. I would have.
Like
Yeah,
3 years ago, 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you know what? It just shows. I feel like it's one of those films that everybody shows somebody at some point because it is
Yeah,
it's a really
definitely.
it's a really important film. Like historically, it's an important
Yeah.
film. As just a film on its own, it's really
Yeah.
good. And like, we've already said, it's not feel good in the same way that the other films we've spoken about on this episode are, like it does have distressing. I mean, I feel
Mm,
like most people listening have probably seen it because it is a
yeah.
classic, but
Yeah.
it does have very distressing material. But I also think this is kind of why we wanted to end it on this one as well. It's one of those films that shows, again, the light. I don't want to sound like, I don't know, really cheesy or airy fairy or anything, but it's that light at the end of the tunnel situation where
Yeah,
like
completely.
it's not always going to be perfect. It's going to be hard. You know, sometimes we will lose people along the
Yeah.
way, but like it's almost kind of like we've done it before, we can do it again.
Yeah, and I
Like,
think it's very much like a gives you perspective sort of film. It's like you say, yeah, it finds the nice moments. So even though it's at a very tumultuous, horrible time for the community, it does still show that people still had, you know, they still had like love and friends and everything. So I think
mhm,
that's what's lovely about it, because it's just so well balanced, which is
mhm,
basically kind of what we were saying before we started recording this episode. Is sometimes it's nice to have a film that takes things seriously and there's weight to it. Sometimes it's nice to have a film that is just silly, like But I'm a Cheerleader. But then
mhm.
something like Pride is like a really nice middle ground, I would say.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's why I think it's a good one to end on today.
Yes.
As we did mention before, we have a few honorable mentions. And if Leanna, you want to go through yours first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have a few of the same. So I'm
We
just gonna,
do.
yeah, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
list them I know you didn't include.
Yeah.
They are The Miseducation of Cameron Post, which, you know, you could decide if it's happy or not. I wouldn't say it's happy, but
Hmm.
I would say that it's definitely leaning in a more like positive, it
Yeah.
leans in a positive direction.
Hmm. Hmm.
Booksmart, which again is another example of a film that doesn't necessarily like focus on queerness, but it is a really big part of one of the characters' identities. Another one is San Junipero. Not a
Hmm.
film, but
It may
Slay.
as well be.
Might as
Yeah.
well be. Fuck
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Put it this way, my boyfriend now says it's his favorite episode of Black Mirror, and it's one of the best episodes of television he's ever seen, and he nearly cried. He doesn't cry at anything.
And he'd be fucking right.
And I found him listening to the score of that episode multiple times.
It's so
So I mean,
beautiful.
exactly. Go on, guys. Watch San Junipero. Genuinely, it's not even like a watch it for a Black Mirror episode. It is just watch it if you want an hour of beautiful
Do you
TV.
know what? It's the only Black Mirror episode that my
A
partner's
happy
ever
ending.
seen.
What?
Well, that too. Well, yeah, no, because she doesn't say,
Oh,
she
she
won't
doesn't
watch.
like super dark stuff either,
She
does
doesn't like
she?
super dark stuff, but I
Yeah,
said just watch this one, and she did, and she loved it.
exactly.
Hmm.
Brilliant. What about you? What have you got?
So a couple of mine are ones that I haven't seen myself because I only wanted to talk about ones that I'd seen because again I
Mhm.
know even feel good stuff can have distressing
Yeah.
material, so I didn't want to go like recommending things without being able to give content
Yeah.
warnings. But ones that kept popping up that I plan to check out myself after we finish this episode is God's Own Country,
Mm,
Shelter, Saving Face, which I'm really annoyed I didn't.
I
It's
know. I've
It
been
seems like a
meaning to
really
watch it
good
for
one.
years.
It's just one of those things that it's like I just didn't get around to watching it in time. I based it off ones I'd already seen to
Yeah,
kind of just so I knew I could talk about them. Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, is another
oh my
one that
god,
kept
that's
coming up.
brilliant.
Because
I
if
love
you
that.
want to talk about just ridiculousness for ridiculousness
Yeah,
sake,
what
that's
a film,
that's
what a
one.
film.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then the last three are Romeo's, Lawrence Anyways, which is one I really want to
Mhm.
watch, but it's a French film I cannot find anywhere.
Yeah,
Like, and I will admit,
probably
this
one of
is
those where you have to have Mubi or something.
something like that, or I don't know. I was just like, I think I'm just gonna get it on DVD because like
Yeah,
I really want to watch it.
sure.
And then a last one was Handsome Devil. I didn't
Yes.
talk about it like too deeply because it kind of like similar vibes to the way he looks. It's coming of age, but Handsome Devil's really interesting because one, it has Andrew Scott, so like just go watch it for that if nothing else. But it's also really good. No, it is also really good. Because it shows kind of like the generational experience, and like the thing in that film that always stands out to me specifically is the conversation between Connor and Andrew Scott's teacher, because like one of them is a student who literally thinks this is, you know, this is his life, this is his queer experience, it's horrible, he hates it. And then there's a teacher who's like 20 years older than him being like, even still is like, it sucks, but it does get better. It will
Yeah.
still suck at times, but it does get better. And I just like, just for that conversation alone, I just really liked the film. Yeah.
There was one that we didn't bring up because honestly I don't know where people fall on it. But my final one I would say actually is Moonlight. Because although it does talk about some distressing topics, it does show two men that find comfort in each other, you know, and they get to, in their own way, admit their feelings for each other, and a guy gets a positive first experience and things like that. So I would say for like those moments of the film alone, I would list Moonlight here, but obviously everyone will have their own opinion on that.
I think this is why as well, like even we said at the beginning of this episode, feel good is very subjective.
Yeah.
Like I understand why stuff like Brokeback Mountain and things like that came up. And like we said, even Pride, like feel good means different things. You know, we just wanted to bring a bit more attention to films that feel good, but also do actually have happy endings.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and
possible.
I mean, we did all the research we could. We both looked online and, you know, on socials and Letterboxd. But if you know of any deep cuts or obvious choices that we've missed, please let us know, because like with every episode, we're asking for recommendations. We love them.
Definitely.
Yes, especially for a topic like this. Like, come on.
I just want to grow my own list, to be honest, because like I said, when I was looking and I realized, well, I haven't actually seen a lot because part my own fault for being drawn to angst, I just am, whether it's queer or not. But also these are the films that get pushed out, you know, like the Call Me by Your Names and stuff like that. It's like, I get it, I get it, I do. But it ain't all that's out there, and I think it's just important to remember that.
Exactly. So if you enjoyed this episode, which we really hope you did, then please leave a like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're anywhere else, we love any kind of interaction. Please follow us on socials. Honestly, this was an episode that we were really looking forward to, and I actually really enjoyed recording.
We also very much are aware that by the time this episode goes live, Pride Month is pretty much over. But that's also kind of the point. Like, it's not.
Yeah, it's a wrap up.
You know what I mean? It's, you know, like, yeah, okay, the month of Pride is over, but we ain't going anywhere for one.
Exactly.
You know, yeah, like we always say, we make content for Pride, but we make queer content all year round. So if this is the first episode you're coming across as well, we you know, we have a lot of stuff, but we'll link.
We have a queer playlist, so we'll link that as well. So you have plenty to get through. But yeah, so that's it from us today, and have a good one. Bye.
Bye.